Hello folks, R1 here. Welcome to Virtual Realms. This is Christmas Day. My Christmas. I had a big day planned, but it's not what you might expect. I had a lot of work that I had been doing up until this point, and a lot more to do even on Christmas Day. The night before had been particularly tiring, not because I was up late wrapping presents or stuffing stockings, but because Sarah, who has been with me from the very beginning, well, she was very, very pregnant, and I couldn't let her stay out here on a cold and snowy winter's night to deliver that child by herself. So I stood by her side and waited for the blessed event to occur. And there we go. As I hurriedly began the post-birth procedures that had become so familiar to me lately, it took me a moment to realize that something was a little strange about this birth. This youngster's appearance was not at all what I had expected. Now granted, we had been going through an intensive breeding program at the compound lately, but I didn't remember Sarah breeding with a black Paraceratherium or one that had remotely the same colorations as this child. But there it was, black as pitch, offset with a pallid gray. Well, I shook my head and I decided that my memory must simply be failing me. So, in jest, I decided that I was going to name this little one El Diablo. In hindsight, when faced with this strangely dark newborn, during one of the black snowstorms that sometimes afflicts the ARK, on Christmas Eve, perhaps naming him after the devil was not such a great idea. However, at the time I thought no more about it, and hurriedly finished up in hopes of catching at least a couple of hours sleep before Christmas morning arrived. Holiday festivities were planned to take up the entire afternoon and evening, but since I had no plans for Christmas morning, I had decided that I would spend the early morning hours out at the new Site B, working with the animals there. So with such a full day planned, I certainly needed to get a little bit of sleep. But it wasn't meant to be. That was the first night in a long series of nights that I began to have the dream. It always starts the same. I'm underwater. It's brisk but not freezing, and everything's green as if in early spring, and I realize I'm not alone. Moving through the water toward me, it's always the head of one of my animal companions, obviously deceased, relentlessly moving toward me. And while all the other creatures around me made noise, as did I, this thing always moves silently and never causes a ripple in the water. I moved aside to let it go past, but it slowly turns and continues in my direction, passing through the other creatures as if it, or they, didn't really exist. I sidestep it again because I have a chilling feeling that it's not a good idea to touch that thing. I'll make a break for it. I'll try to get away as quickly as I can and get out of the water, but it's always right behind me. I'll run further up on land. Perhaps it can't leave the pool. But that's not the case. It continues even out of the water, but slowly sinks into the earth. In my dream, I'm terrified, and I make a break for the safety of the work shed. But I can't seem to run. I can barely get my legs to move. They feel like they're made of lead. So as I move back through the shallow water, I look behind me again, and it's right behind me. A terrifying mockery of a once friendly face. Well, that will break something loose, and I'll make a panic dash up the hill. But I can't shake the feeling that it's right behind me. I have to look. And yes, is still there, coming relentlessly in my direction, moving to a position below me. And I have this feeling I can't let that happen. If it gets below me, it might swallow me up. Irrational, I know, but such is a dream. I jump past it, and it turns to follow me again. I make a break for shore again. And when I turn, it's not there. I almost breathe a sigh of relief, but something tells me I'm not safe, that I need to move, and I need to move quickly. And sure enough, out of the corner of my eye, I spot it again, directly behind me. I barely got away in time. It won't stop. It pursues me all night, a grim specter that I see every time I close my eyes. What could such a dream possibly mean? Well, it means I need to snap out of it. I've got way too much to do and way too little sleep to do it on. I have got to get myself up and motivated. It's Christmas morning and I have a full day planned. I can't let a little thing like pesky dreams of impending doom slow me down. I've got work to do. Those presents are going to have to wait. Because right now it's time to fly. Yeah, no, I meant that literally, not figuratively. I need to grab Sikorsky and fly out to the unfortunately named Dead Island. The basic construction of Site B was to a point where I could consider it secure, and I felt that that particular morning was a great time to start on actually training the animals as I wanted them to be trained, to take advantage of the unnaturally high concentration of carnivores on this island, to enable them to learn how to survive even under the most extreme conditions. It would also be signifying taking the first steps toward my secondary goal, that of bringing a more balanced ecosystem to this misbegotten island. As I set about the task of luring breakfast to my carnivores back at the compound, I couldn't help but find it ironic that, having a T-Rex breathing down my neck, I took in stride as an everyday occurrence. It generated nothing of the fear that silly dream the night before had created in my soul. Silly dream. Obviously, it meant nothing and could be safely ignored. As my animal companions made short work of the T-Rex, I noted that the onset of winter here on the ARK explained something that had always puzzled me. I had found pure white variations of many creatures scattered across all regions of the ARK. Normally, white creatures could not survive long outside of a snowy environment, but here the animal life has adapted to the seasonal changes, and individuals like this T-Rex had a distinct advantage over more mundane color variations, at least at this more difficult time of year. Not that it did that brute much good. Something about color variations kept nagging at me in the back of my mind, but I thrust those thoughts aside. It was time to start training in earnest, and I decided to start by taking out a Sarco patrol. I took out a reasonably fit mated pair of adult Sarcos and gave them the command to aggressively attack anything that they came across, and then return to me when the area was secure. I would have preferred to just let them roam freely, but it was a bit early in their training to put them at risk like that. Plus, unlike non-aquatic capable creatures, Sarcos don't ignore creatures they encounter in the water and actively pursue them. This can result in them wandering far afield, completely off the island and out of my sight for long periods of time in pursuit of prey. by giving them the command to return to me when done, I at least minimized the risk of these primitive creatures getting lost permanently. Although even then, this patrol was at times an exercise in patience. I don't know if I'll ever be able to allow the sarcos and other aquatic-capable animals to roam this island freely, but there may still be value in letting them patrol offshore as they wish, coming on shore only occasionally when drawn there by prey. One thing that may end up being a partial solution to this problem is that by using the strange technology present in the implant embedded in my forearm as a template of sorts, I've been able to craft a set of rudimentary tracking devices. This should allow me to at least locate creatures that have wandered off the island more easily, although that would still be a time-consuming process and far from ideal. Still, the brace of sarcos did well, dealing with significant threats with little trouble, especially when attacking in shallow water. This is exactly how sarcos prefer to hunt in the wild, and it comes naturally to them. A sarco hunting at the water's edge is quite formidable, and something to be avoided at all costs, as these creatures have found out to their dismay. Even separated from his mate, this sarco had little trouble dealing with superior numbers, and even had a little bit of sport with them, taking his time to playfully make a game out of nipping off this scorpion's tail before devouring it. At least, he did until his mate showed up to spoil his fun. Now it's just a matter of waiting for them to finish with the megalodons just offshore, and then it will be time to take out a different sort of patrol. I had decided it was time to put some of the herbivores through their paces. After all, I also wanted to institute some balance into the ecosystem here, and the presence of strong herds fully capable of defending themselves was the key to that happening. For a first outing, I decided to go big, restricting the patrol to tail swingers like this Bronto, Sinclair, with a backup of 3 stegos. I call him Sinclair because, well, he's a little gassy. And he's a brontosaurus. Oh well, some of you older folks will get the gas station reference, but as for the rest of you, just remember, Google is your friend. I was delighted to find that the herbivores did just as well as their carnivore brethren, perhaps even better. Nothing on the island proved to be a significant threat. Sinclair's massive reach and power dealt with most threats easily, and the stegos did an excellent job of covering his flanks and, believe it or not, running down threats that attempted to flee the carnage. Tail swingers proved to be particularly adept at bringing down large groups of carnivores, hunting or fighting in close proximity to each other. These large groups are a threat every bit as potent as the T-Rexes native to the island, and are encountered far more frequently. That got me thinking about the mix of animals that I had brought to the island. Many of the creatures back at the compound were carnivores that were native to the island already. I had brought them here originally, thinking that their presence would be necessary to protect their herbivore brethren, but perhaps that was not the case. In fact, their presence here somewhat undermined my desire to bring balance to the local wildlife population. I decided that, just maybe, I should give this matter further consideration. Also, as I watched, I began thinking about color variations here on the ARK again. You see, my investigations into that matter had led me to yet another odd discovery about the creatures here. It seems that all of the normally extinct wildlife here suffers from an inherent deficiency in the amino acid known as lysine. Normally, this would be detrimental to their health. However, the native vegetation here introduces just enough lysine into the food chain for the animal population to survive. This discovery could revolutionize our popular theories concerning extinction events. It's possible that it wasn't a meteor that killed the dinosaurs, but rather a large-scale change in the lysine levels produced by the plants forming the bottom layer of the food chain. In fact, I have found that by giving lysine-rich food supplements to my tamed animals, I was able to not only increase the vibrancy and diversity of their color variations, but recipients of those supplements maintain a much higher level of health and vitality than identical wild specimens. This explains, to a large degree, why my creatures generally had no difficulty dealing with what would normally be considered alpha predators, even in situations where teamwork and training weren't the determining factor in the outcome. There is something that had begun to bother me about this as well. The lysine supplements had become a huge factor in my companion's survival ability, but I had failed to consider what would happen to them when I was gone. Perhaps that reoccurring nightmare was exerting its influence over me, but these thoughts were on my mind. And so, after considering the matter over the next few days, I eventually made two fateful decisions. First, I decided to remove any predator from Site B that was already native to the island. And second, to also cease giving my animal friends the lysine-rich food supplements that they had come to depend on so much, so that when the time inevitably came that I could no longer provide it for them, they would still be fully capable of embodying the next step in behavioral evolution and survival here on the ARK. While I still feel the removal of native predatory species from Site B was a wise move, the fateful decision to discontinue the lysine-rich food supplements proved to have consequences far more devastating than I could possibly have imagined. About that same time, spring arrived on the ARK, but it was not a cause for celebration. Within a day after I removed the lysine supplement from their diet, roughly a third of my animal friends went into a coma and would not respond to treatment. Their addiction to the lysine supplement had just proven to be too strong. All of my sabers, T-Rex, Argents, and Pteranodons, as well as most of my Carnos and Raptors, passed away overnight. All because I didn't give due consideration before I started trying to boost my companion's natural abilities beyond what nature intended. Was this what my nightmare was trying to tell me? Was it an omen or a portent of approaching doom? And will this suddenly full cemetery haunt my conscience until the end of my days? Grace, you lovable idiot, you nearly scared me to death. Don't ever do that again. Well, on second thought, Grace, forget that. That silly scare just brought me to my senses. These tombstones aren't necessary to remember my animal friends, or to remember how to show proper consideration next time I make a decision about my charge's care. It's been a few days, and both of my sanctuaries are already bouncing back, stronger than ever before. The future ahead of us couldn't look brighter. These creatures will have an advantage in the struggle for survival here on the ARK, but it will be because of the training that I provide, not chemicals. Training so deeply ingrained in them that they will instinctually pass it on to their young long after I'm gone. Remember, folks, superstitions about omens and portents are just our attempt to explain things we don't fully understand yet. And dreams, good or bad, are just our subconscious working through problems that our conscious minds haven't fully recognized yet. So the next time you're chased by a scary monster in a nightmare, as my daughter, Tiny Viking, is on occasion, you just remember what Ranger 1 would do in a situation like that. You turn right around and look it square in the eye and say, "Give me your best shot." I can take it. Until I see you again, my friends, sleep well. Thanks for watching. I hope you were entertained. If you liked the video, please remember to subscribe. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you. And I'll see you next time.